Hi class, my name is Miss Baldwin and I will be your English teacher for this period. Now I have prepared a mini lesson on the Romantic era poets for you today, but before I begin, I would like you to do this interactive activity. Turn to the person next to you and spend about 5 minutes talking to them about a time in your life when you felt a very strong emotion. It could be very happy, very sad, frightened, angry, a time when you felt those feelings and wanted to share them with others but didn't quite know how. So take about 5 minutes and then we'll regroup from there. Okay, I'm hearing a lot of really great conversations. 5 minutes is up, but keep those thoughts in the back of your head because you'll need them for the end of this lesson. The reason why I had you talk to each other about those experiences in your life is because I wanted it to serve as a springboard into the poet that I'll be teaching you guys about. His name is Edgar Allan Poe, and he is my very favorite of the Romantic era poets and possibly of all time. Simply because, if only because, the way that he takes his emotions, the way that he views the world in which he lives, and his life experiences, both the good, but especially the bad life experiences, and uses them to make hauntingly beautiful works of literature to evoke strong emotions from his readers. So here's a PowerPoint presentation I've created to help you learn a little bit more about one of those poems. This is one of his most emotionally constructed poems that he's written. It's called The Bells, written in 1848. And throughout the PowerPoint, note the types of literary devices he uses to evoke those emotions from his readers. This first stanza is about silver bells. Hear the sledges with the bells, silver bells. Now, silver bells, when we think of silver bells, we think about the bells on sleighs, and it brings to mind thoughts of Christmas and time spent with family and friends. And Poe had some of those same experiences in his childhood during Christmas time. And then what a world of merriment the melody foretells. This syntax evokes the feeling of child innocence and fun. And there's several lines in the stanza that point to this feeling. But another one of those that I chose was, all of heaven seems to twinkle with a crystalline delight. I mean, one can't read that line with a frown. It just evokes a smile to the faces of Poe's readers and a happiness to their souls. And then this mention of the word heaven goes back to innocence, child innocence, and not having a care in the world, and just having fun with your friends. Now moving on to the second stanza. Hear the mellow wedding bells, golden bells. In this stanza, Poe is celebrating his marriage between himself and Virginia Clem. And in line 5, it says how they ring out their delight. This syntax shows the happiness and joy of Poe and Virginia upon getting married, and then on the future how it tells it signifies Poe's hope of a long and fruitful marriage with his wife and being able to raise a family with her. Everything sounds really happy and joyful, innocent, and then more mature as it goes on to golden bells with marriage and the thought of raising a family. But look what happens in this, or rather listen to what happens in this third stanza. Hear the loud alarum bells, brazen bells. This is the second half of the poem, and throughout the second half, Poe's bells take on a darker persona than they did in the first two stanzas. What a tale of terror now their turbulency tells. This is alliteration, and the hard T sound is repeated throughout that one line to add to the growing intensity of this poem. And the experience that this represents is Poe's feelings while watching the progression of his wife's battle with tuberculosis, which ultimately caused her death. And later in the poem, in the stanza, he writes how the danger sinks and swells. This compare and contrast represents Virginia's health. Sometimes it would improve and sometimes it would worsen. And Poe actually felt more on edge during her better days because he never knew when she would fall ill again. So much so that one of his most famous quotes was, "I became insane with long intervals of horrible sanity." So you can imagine his thought process and his intense anxiety throughout the later years of his marriage to his wife. And last but not least, we have iron bells. Hear the tolling of the bells. Tolling of bells brings to mind death and funeral services. Namely, the death in question would be, of course, Virginia's death. And now we get introduced to these creatures that are described as being neither man nor woman, neither brute nor human, but ghouls. And ghouls are like our modern day zombies. They're zombie-like monsters who feed on the dead. And then later down, we see that we meet the person in charge of this tolling, the king of ghouls, knells a paean of the bells, and he dances and he yells. So not only is he the one who's tolling the bells, but he's laughing in triumph over the bodies of the people that they're eating. And then lastly, I would like to direct your attention to this line here, keeping time in a sort of runic rhyme. Not only is there again repetition of that T sound, but it's repetition of the line from the first stanza, namely stanza 1, lines 9 through 10. And it's in direct contrast of context from that first stanza, because the first stanza was about laughing and playing with friends during Christmas time. But this is the laughter of this monster who's feeding on human bodies and gloating and triumph over being able to do that. So what does this mean about your life? See, Poe took both the good experiences in his life as well as the bad in order to make hauntingly beautiful works of writing. Notice throughout the PowerPoint, I picked out lines that had strong syntax, strong alliteration, repetition, of course, audible and some visual description to show how Poe tries to evoke that same emotion from his readers to kind of pull them into his life, into his world. So what about you? Going back to that, to what you were talking about with your partner, about that time in your life where you felt that strong emotional feeling, think about how you would write something like this, how you would do sort of what Poe did. As an extra credit assignment, I would like you to try to write a poem about that experience in your life in the style of Poe's poem, The Bells. Of course, it doesn't need to be quite as extensive as his, but maybe about the length of one of his single stanzas, like his stanzas where he writes about one single type of bell. Maybe use metaphor, use strong syntax, repetition, the same elements that Poe uses in his poem to evoke those emotions from your potential readers. So yeah, good class time, guys, and class dismissed.